Welcome to the Solution Nation podcast. My name is Sean Snowday, and I'm the president of Solution Nation. Solution Nation is dedicated to providing a platform for investors to learn about Israel's most dynamic public and private companies. We interview lead venture capitalists, Wall Street analysts, investment bankers, and managers of incubators and accelerators. Today's topic is manufacturing in Asia, and our guest is Jacob Rothman. Now, over the past 2 decades, Jacob has built a thriving manufacturing business in China. He also established manufacturing presence in Cambodia, Vietnam, and India. Jacob has researched opening factories in points as disparate as the Philippines, Turkey, Mexico, and South America. Please remember that all content provided on the Solution Nation podcast and website is for educational purposes only. Nothing shall be construed as investment advice. Investment decisions shall not be made based on information, written, verbal, or otherwise, posted or spoken on Solution Nation. Conduct your own research or consult with your own investment advisors before making investment decisions. So here's my good friend, the host of the show, and the CEO of Solution Nation, David Wanatik.
Welcome to the Solution Nation podcast series. My name is David Wanatik. I'd like to welcome everyone today. The focus of today's session is manufacturing in Asia. Speaking to us today, we have Jacob Rothman, who is the co-chief executive officer of VLong Enterprises. Jacob, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what VLong Enterprises does.
Sure. We started it about 20 years ago, and we were a small barbecue accessory manufacturer in the southern part of China. So after 20 years, we built a kitchen division, a startup division, a design company, and part of the company build our own brands as well. So we've expanded from almost literally dirt floors in the southern part of China to having multiple manufacturing locations, both in China and now starting around the world.
And are your customers in China or in the US or other Western countries?
Well, we make grilling and kitchen items, and most people in the West cook differently here than here in China. So the majority of our customers are outside of China.
Okay. So overall, what is the level of difficulty of doing business in China, and what are the advantages? What are the efficiencies that you get from having manufacturing operations in China?
Well, for the most part, it's the only place to manufacture. And I say that very generally speaking, because obviously manufacturing is taking place all around the world and even in the United States where I'm from. But since reform and opening here in China, there's been 30 plus years of building a supply chain that works almost flawlessly. I mean, nothing in manufacturing and product development is flawless, but logistically speaking, machinery, equipment, raw materials, there's everything here that anyone would ever want to build products in China.
Mm-hmm. So the quality of the infrastructure in the big cities, it's good. But as you get further afield, is the quality of the roads still good and other infrastructure?
Oh, sure. That's what's propped up GDP here for so long is massive building projects. So you can be on highways outside of Shanghai or Guangzhou for days and have beautiful, highways and roads and bridges and everything else. But the reality is most of the manufacturing takes place within a long strip from Shenzhen, moving north, and everything is built up there to what anyone would need. If you look at India or other places, the roads aren't so good. It's hard to get a truck from outside of Delhi into Delhi and then onto a ship or a plane or whatever you need. It's harder.
Mm-hmm. And what about the reliability of electricity and water, so forth?
We used to, when I first started, have power outages, and from time to time that happens here as well, depending on what's going on, weather and other events in China. But for the most part, it's great, and when you compare it to other countries, it's better than great. reasonably priced. You have other countries like Mexico that energy is a significant part of the manufacturing input to figure out costs, and it's higher.
Mhm. What about the quality of the workforce? Are you generally very impressed with the quality of the Chinese workforce?
Yeah, there's really nothing like it. And I hate to make large cultural generalizations, but Chinese factory workers are disciplined, work hard, don't complain very much, and are great. I've manufactured and worked in countries around the world where that's not the case.
Mhm. So I believe you speak Chinese, but for Westerners that don't speak Chinese, that have to interact with a supervisor or a factory manager, how easy or difficult is it to communicate with most? I know it's a generality, but how is their English speaking ability?
It's pretty good. There's missed communications. Obviously, one of the reasons we've done well as a company is because we have a mixed culture and English-speaking people on staff, native English-speaking people on staff, and Germans and Australians and Filipinos, and so we built an international team. But it can be a barrier. But if I didn't speak Mandarin, I would be fine doing business here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're still in the COVID era, especially in China. But outside of the COVID era, was it easier or difficult for you to get the necessary visas for people to go to work in China or to visit you at your factories?
Yeah, there was never a problem. Now it's a serious problem. I personally have been here for 3 years and haven't gone back to California, but and people who want to visit, we haven't seen customers from abroad in years, and I don't know when it's going to be something that people can do easily, but it's been years.
Mm-hmm. What is the risk now of one having their factory shut down effectively because of quarantines or COVID testing?
There are high risks. You probably saw in the news in the last couple of days that there are riots at Foxconn, right? And that's a huge example and the best of manufacturing for, obviously one of the most important companies in the world, Apple. But then it filters down to smaller manufacturers, and Shenzhen has been sporadically shut down, Guangzhou, and then there are all the parts of China that you don't hear about. We don't talk about Chongqing very often because it's not, well, at least recently, politically significant. But Chongqing has 30 million people, and it's shut down currently. It's my wife's hometowns, and many other places around China that you don't hear about.
Okay. What should a potential manufacturer in China know about the work culture, taking breaks during the day, living on campus, having a cafeteria, that kind of thing that maybe an American or Israeli or Western or European wouldn't expect?
Most of the factories that are doing export business, especially for retailers, are fairly strict about working times, hours, holidays. I think most people complain about Chinese holidays. They I think they feel like we take more breaks here than anywhere in the world. I don't know that that's actually the case, but it's the assumption. Just because they're so different from holidays around the world, I suppose, or international holidays. Food, working conditions, they've improved so much over the years. I eat in our own cafeteria when I'm at our main factory and headquarters. It's not kosher, but neither am I. That's okay. But the food is great. And we work on hydroponics. So we're actually growing food that goes into our cafeteria. And so we have a circular sort of system going on. So it's great, actually.
But isn't it common at Chinese factories that workers take maybe 2 hours for lunch and nap during the afternoon? And the reason why I ask is because at my limited experience, one afternoon I was at a factory, and the workers had like lounge chairs and would doze off for a while.
At lunchtime, we have an hour off for lunch, I think, like most places around the world. And, I struggle with sleep. So I'm jealous of anyone who can nap. And, I've never seen anyone, again, broadly speaking, that can fall asleep in a moment and get good sleep. And so if you come to our main office at lunchtime, it's like, a zombie apocalypse. The lights are out. There are folding beds all around, and people are actually asleep. And I'm jealous of them every time I see them.
Okay. The Chinese workforce seems to be very disciplined and somewhat malleable. One time I was in China, and maybe there was a holiday before I arrived, but the government just decided that they're canceling 2 weekends. So people were working for 9 days straight, and the few people I was interacting with, none of them complained. They just sort of accepted that the government decided that the weekends are canceled.
Well, the government doesn't arbitrarily shut down the weekend, but what does happen during holidays, and I've never quite understood why we do this here, is that they will give us days that correspond with the actual holiday off. And then because they want to extend it through a few more days, they'll do that just to get longer time periods in one batch. And then you'll have to work on the weekend. And the reason for that, I think in most cases, is because many of the workers are not local. So they need more time to go back and forth to their hometowns. But the work calendar is set, and you're not allowed to have workers work beyond certain hours and number of days. We work with IKEA. They're very strict about what and when workers can do and don't do. And so is Walmart and Target and most retail chains around the world. But the government doesn't arbitrarily do it. They're set, and they're more fair than you think. You just may have come here on a bad time or something.
Okay. You live in Shanghai?
I do, yeah.
Is there anything you can say about the Jewish community in Shanghai? Are you familiar with
that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. And so it's mostly Chabad. And I think because a lot of the visitors, it was a really, a community that's built on people coming in, staying for Shabbat, or a holiday, or staying for an extended period of time and leaving. There used to be two. I'm probably revealing my how much I go to shul, but there used to be two communities. Great rabbi, Rabbi Greenberg, Chabad rabbi, growing up in California. It's not quite what I was used to growing up, but if you're looking for a great community and a rabbi who loves schnapps with his Shabbat meal and very warm and welcoming, we have one here. Going back quite a bit in time, China did help quite a lot of Jews escape the Holocaust. And before that, I believe there was a Russian Jewish community here that was left its mark on Shanghai. There are a few non-consecrated buildings now, but that are in Shanghai that are still here historically. And that's mostly the Jewish community.
If I'm not wrong, I think there was a Jewish community in Harbin. After World War II, I think some refugees went there.
You're talking about the community outside of Xi'an, not Harbin.
Okay.
So Xi'an was the terminus of the Silk Road, and many religions that travel the Silk Road, Islam seem to flourish here. Obviously, there's a massive Muslim population in China. Nestorian Christians left stela out in the area around that you can still see today. And there's a Jewish community there, and up until relatively recently, and it's still there. You can still visit it, and there are remnants of it, but most of them now have been expatriated back to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the best way to find a manufacturing contractor in China? If we don't know anything about China and we want to manufacture there, where do we go to find some of the best ones for our product?
Years ago, it was the Hong Kong Enterprise. And you used to get a telephone book size book in the mail, and you flip through it, and there are glossy photographs of products. And Jack Ma disrupted that with Alibaba. So now you can just go to Alibaba, type in spatula or battery or whatever you need, and you'll get a list of manufacturers. But at this point, it's mostly a guide. It's a look into what might be there. You still have to do some digging. A good way to look through and verify is to get on a import site, Panjiva, Import Yeti, because then you'll see the documents. You can type in a customer name, a retailer, a product type, and you'll see what's being exported, how many shipments, because Alibaba has become somewhat of a jungle. You don't quite know if the person you're contacting is a middle person or an actual factory or a good factory, a bad factory. And unfortunately now, not being able to travel here has prevented you from checking and verifying, as Reagan said a long time ago, or trusting and verifying. Unfortunately, that's you really have to dig a little bit.
Are the manufacturers that are listed in Alibaba rated on that site? Do you know?
Believe it or not, I haven't been on Alibaba in so long. I don't know.
Okay.
I think there was and is some rating systems to sort of curb that, but I actually haven't been on in so long. I don't know.
Okay. I think another attraction of China is that the supply chain is very, very deep. So you have your primary manufacturer in China, but they need a lot of materials and supplies. And unlike other developing markets, other alternative places to manufacture, they have their suppliers, down a couple levels. So you can get what you need. Is that your experience, or?
Yeah, you can do anything you want here. It's the attraction of being in China, and the difficulty of moving or decoupling outside of China is that you just don't have that supply chain matrix for raw materials. We talk about chips a lot in the news now, but how about steel or certain types of plastic? Or the world now, and us in particular, have invested a lot in sustainable manufacturing. That's just getting started in other countries. So the difficulty is that China has made this so easy to do that it's difficult to peel away.
Are manufacturers in China trying to shrink their carbon footprint, or is that something that's not top of mind?
It's very top of mind, and it's top of mind even at this last Congress that convened. Environmentalism is a key driver of the current administration, and it's also part. I think people have a misconception of China sometimes in terms of what goals are for people here and people like me who are involved with China. But there is a green movement here, and we are the ones, if we're the manufacturers of the world, that can make change. So we got awarded something from Walmart, again, another company that often isn't cited for the good work they do. They have something called Project Gigaton, where they want to save a gigaton of carbon emissions. I think they gave themselves either 5 or 10 years to do it, and they're already halfway there. And they do that by encouraging suppliers like us to manufacture sustainably. So solar panels and new materials and sustainable materials, and reducing packaging, reducing plastics and single-use plastics. So it actually is a big deal here.
Okay. And what's maybe the greatest challenge of operating a manufacturing facility in China?
Well, right now it's politics. Before that, manufacturing isn't simple and easy all the time. So I started, my family had a small factory in Santa Barbara, outside of Santa Barbara. Then it moved to Tennessee. Then it moved to Maquiladora on the border with the United States and Mexico. So manufacturing is difficult. But now the single biggest problem is politics. And do they want to support the export economy versus the import, the domestic economy here? And will they turn away from the world, or will they re-engage with the world? And that's the biggest single problem that keeps me up at night.
Okay. So you've opened up a facility in Cambodia, I believe, right? So how does Cambodia compare to China, or do you manufacture different things in Cambodia?
Well, you mentioned supply chain, right? So not the primary manufacturing, but materials and whatnot. So whether it's Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, other parts of Southeast Asia, really some of the problems are raw materials. China makes most of the raw materials, so you still have to import them. Then it's workforce. They're not as trained as other countries. How busy, right? And the biggest driver of any of this is population size, right? So the population of Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines is just a fraction of China. So factories in Vietnam, we started first getting serious about building factories outside of China during the Trump administration, as he pointed out some things that he thought the world should be concerned about. And that's when we started, but it's not easy. It's really not easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in Cambodia, some of the challenges are lack of supply chain, workers not quite as maybe motivated, disciplined, or experienced as in China. Maybe the infrastructure, I would imagine, would not be as good, the roads and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been the case in Cambodia and Vietnam in terms of roads, but workforce, availability of workers, how trained, just manufacturing culture. China has been used to the last 20 years of being just in time, and being just in time is not an easy thing. It's like landing a jet on an aircraft carrier. You really have to be precise about what you're doing, and if you don't have that mentality, forget about regional cultural differences or religious issues, or when people can work or when they want to work, or quality of life ideas. It's not easy to train any organization to meet the demands of just in time, right? Which is part of the problem. You have to ship these things around the world. There's time of shipping. In the last couple of years, it's been more difficult. But in order to meet those schedules, you really got to move, right? And nobody moves like the Chinese right now. It might change. Turkey looks interesting to me. I'm trying to work now with the government in Mexico to open factories there. But China's it, fortunately or unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the others don't work as hard as the Chinese. That's important. Are other cultures trainable and mentorable? Some people don't really take well to constructive criticism or showing them a better way to do things. Is that an issue with workforces outside of China?
Well, I didn't say that other countries don't work hard. I want to avoid generalizations. I would correct that statement and say that they don't have 30 years of learning how to do just-in-time manufacturing, right? And then for the question you just asked, it's a broad generalization, right? People work hard everywhere, but it's training and systems and trying to get them mind focused on, you can't ship late to Target, right? You miss a holiday, you miss an end cap, it's a major deal. But again, that's 20, 30 years of training China to do that. When I first got here 20 years ago, it was a struggle, right? So there's a training time that needs to take place that's important. And other countries haven't had that. And now they're expected to do that. Vietnam, you're close to China, you must be the same. But they're not. They haven't had the time to train up. If you or I decided to run a marathon tomorrow, I doubt either you or I could do it. You got to train for it.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking about India for a second, I think you looked at India. One of the things that surprised me was they have some tension with their workers in some cases. When I was there, I read in the local newspaper, heard on TV about strikes at some manufacturing facilities. Maybe they were Japanese auto manufacturers, but these were violent. These were really violent protests. People getting seriously hurt, being attacked. So that was a surprise for me because Indians and Hindus are very peaceful, very tranquil people usually, and that was something I didn't expect. Not sure the extent to which that kind of thing happens in other countries.
Well, I've been to India many times. We have a joint venture there. The difference in China, for the most part, you have Han Chinese that have a similar cultural background. And so similar thinking, maybe similar beliefs. In India, it's not only just Hindus and Muslims, but you have dozens and dozens and dozens of offshoots of Hinduism, of Islam, of other religions, and it is cacophonous. There are, broadly speaking, Hindus and Muslims, but subsets within there can also set off cultural issues, and it can be violent and it is dangerous sometimes. But India is making great progress, and there's just more diversity across the country and a population that now will pass China, I think, early next year. So you have the same population, but it looks a lot different than China.
Mm-hmm. The stability of the economy can be another issue. Like in some countries have a lot of inflation. And no, I'm not talking about the inflation we have in the United States, which has been bad, but really out of control inflation. So is that another issue that you look at when considering where to put your next facility?
Absolutely. First of all, I love Turkey as a country, just to visit. If my wife would agree, I live in Istanbul. It was better before the last 10 years of the Erdogan administration, but man, Turkey's great. The food is great. The people are great. I've had some really enjoyable times in Turkey. So personally, I just want to be there. But the lira went crazy in the last couple of years. So ideally, if I could wave a wand and make, factories, pop up anywhere, I would have Turkey to service our European customers and Mexico for North America. It avoids freight, it avoids politics, but unfortunately, here I am. I think when I first left for China, and especially when I started dating my wife, my father said, "Are you kidding me? Go to China? In 10 years, you'll be verstupt there and can't leave." And you know what? After 20 years, he was definitely right. I am here in China and can't get out of China. But that's not my fault only, right? There's some of the things like you mentioned, inflation, politics. The Mexican economy has collapsed several times in my lifetime. Who knows if it will happen again?
What about ownership? Do you own your company? I think you have a partner, but can one own a business 100%, or do you have to have a Chinese partner? Can you own a manufacturing plant yourself? Or
you can. Okay. You can. It's just easier. The business is owned by my wife and my business partner and his wife. But you can. I have an Irish friend who owns a tool manufacturing factory outside of Hangzhou. Okay.
So I guess another issue with the investments is, the depth of the supply chain, the size of the manufacturing culture in these different countries. And I guess if you're going to make a big investment in a factory and it doesn't work out, you want there to be a possibility of finding a buyer for that facility. And if you go to a country that just doesn't have the size of the manufacturing community, you may have a stranded investment.
Yeah, again, amongst the other things that keep me up at night and not sleeping at lunchtime with my coworkers, is that the world wants us to move. That's clear. Most customers want a China plus one strategy. at least. People are, for right reasons, concerned about what happens geopolitically between China and mostly the United States, but China and the world. As manufacturers, if we open someplace and all of a sudden things get better, people are going to come right back to China, and then we're going to be owning factories around the world that maybe people don't want anymore. And it did happen to us during when this got started. We opened a factory in Cambodia. Some of our customers encouraged us to do that, and now things have slowed down in terms of orders and inflation in the economy. So that factory is not as productive as we had hoped. In fact, it's losing money right now until things pick up. But I could see that easily happening in Mexico, in Turkey, or other places, because it's so easy, right? I mean, all they have to do is decide that they want to re-engage with the world and make everything, nice again, and people will come back. There'll be some who went through this and said, not for me, and try to reestablish manufacturing in other parts of the world. But for the most part, if the politics calm down, in my opinion, everything will come back here.
Mm-hmm. In any of the countries that you're operating in or considered operating in, to what extent have currency controls been a concern? Just the ability to move money in and out to pay vendors and to receive money from clients and so on.
Well, in China, it's a thing for sure. Most of us have Hong Kong enterprises, Hong Kong entities to move U.S. dollars in and out. The U.S. Changing money from here, from renminbi to other currencies and out again is a complicated process. Other countries don't have similar controls. China really wants to, control that more than others. So I would say it's a bit easier around the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned the expat community a little bit. How does the expat community in China or Shanghai compare to that in Cambodia or Vietnam or the Philippines or India? You're acclimated, but it takes a long time to get acclimated. So in the meantime, you need some community.
I think in most countries you can live the type of lifestyle that you want. So when I came here originally, I played rugby with the rugby team. I went to the shul from time to time, not all the time. And there are many foreigners here in China who have sort of a insular life and only really see other foreigners. And if you want that, you can do that. And I think you can in most countries. There's a foreign community in Saigon when I was there, and not so much in Phnom Penh, but even there you can find any community, I think, that you want. I'm more inspired to learn about other cultures and foods and religions. So you'll find me mostly at some local place trying to figure out how to speak to somebody there. But if you wanted to find a foreign community and live that life, I think you can do it in most places.
Okay. Any other advice you have for manufacturers that are considering establishing a facility in China or one of the other Asian countries? Any mistakes they should avoid or anything they definitely should do?
China still is the place to manufacture, but having, the roots here in China and then branching out from there, I think is the best way to go. I don't know if there's any advice that I can offer, because we're all learning this on the go. We had the rug pulled out from under us with COVID and politics in the last 3 years. So, ask me in 2 years from now, maybe I'll have a better answer. But all this is evolving in the moment, to be honest.
Sure. Well, okay. This was a great session. We all learned something from you, and this will be very helpful to other manufacturers that are thinking about manufacturing outside of Israel or the United States or other Western countries. Thank you.
Thanks, David.